So great to be here. So excited for this virtual summit, Ladies Who Launch, and so pumped for the amazing lineup we have for this panel. So this is the, show me the money panel. Let's talk about the hard cash. I'm Shireen. I'm going to just give a little background about myself. We'll do quick intros and we're going to get into it. We have some awesome perspectives here, folks that have bootstrapped, that have raised venture funding, that have crowdsourced. So we kind of like have the whole gamut. So my background, Shireen Yates, I was the founder and CEO of Nima Labs. We raised over 20 million in venture funding and sold the company last year. It was a hardware connected device, tested food for allergens. Hey, Kate. So that's my background. And coincidentally, Aditi's on this panel, and it's coincidence because Upfront Ventures was one of our seed investors who was with us through the entire journey. Can't say enough great things about awesome, great people and amazing venture firm early stage. So that's a plug that we didn't plan, but I think it's a good transition maybe over to Aditi if you want to intro yourself, and then we'll go to Elise and Kate.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited to be and get to do it with Shireen and Elise and Kate as well. So I'm a partner at Upfront Ventures, which is an LA-based fund, and I live in San Francisco and opened our office up here. We are early stage investors, so think of us as sort of the first institutional check that we would any sort of company organization would go about fundraising for. We write checks anywhere between sort of $1 million, we've been as low as $1 million, going up to $5 to $6 million to lead rounds. You can call those seed, Series A's, sort of the whole range of it. And and then I spend a lot of time focused on a couple different categories, and then I spend a lot of time with female founders too. So I will popcorn it over to Elise.
My name's Elise, and my wife and I own a company called Brand Pride. We're a promotional merchandise company. We've been selling swag for about 21 years. And then I've got this entrepreneurial spirit where I don't take money from anyone. I don't know if it's my age, but we've grown organically, and it's been a slow crawl, but it's been very rewarding. And then last year we started Pride in a Box, and it's definitely a startup, and I applied to get some funding from Ladies Who Launch, and it really helped. So we're bootstrapping it, and I really never learned anything about asking for money or venture capital until last year. So I didn't even know it was possible. And then hearing, how hard it is for women to get money, it kind of has gotten me fired up. And I'll turn it over to Kate.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Sun and Swell. We make healthy, sustainable, and for us, my journey has been with fundraising we've been growing the company for about 4 years now. We started with friends and family money after investing some of our own money, and then most recently, we completed a crowdfunding campaign where we raised over about $700,000. So that's excited to share everything I know about that world.
You guys, so we're gonna just transition over a little bit to Elise and Kate. You spoke a little bit about how y'all started and crowdsourcing, bootstrap. But Elise, can you go into a little more detail? When you first started the business, what did bootstrapping look like for you? How did you actually fund those that first early stage of your business?
Well, there's two ways. For Brand Pride, bootstrapping, it was putting everything on my credit card. I think we put $2,000 on our credit card to join the advertising. What is it? ASI, Advertising Specialty Institute. And it was just organic growth from there, just, learning the hard way of how to spend money. I mean, my degree's in art. I don't have a business background, but I do have a good work ethic. And then with starting Pride in a Box, it was really refreshing to know that there were organizations out there like Ladies Who Launch, who had some seed money to get everything started. And it was such a relief to know that I didn't have to pay that money back. And, we're selling the boxes right now, actually selling quite a few. And it's just nice to have that seed money so I can reinvest back into the company. And I never did that with Brand Pride. It's just slow organic growth. So I see the value in it, but it's opened my eyes, and it makes me want to think, ooh, what else can I do?
What about you, Kate? How about you? What made you go down the crowdsourcing path?
Yeah, so for us, our goal with our company is to eliminate single-use plastics from the grocery industry, and we have a huge sense of urgency to do that quickly. We think if, the longer we wait to grow our company more, the more and more single-use plastics going out there in the world. And so our goal is to grow fast. I definitely didn't want to take a bunch of money from the very start. We wanted to prove the concept, made sure we felt really good about what we were building and that we had, a product that people want. Once we got to that point, we just, my co-founder, who's my husband, we just were too resource constrained. We didn't have any more time. I had a baby last year, so I have an almost 1-year-old. So between being a new mom, only having two of us, we just got to the point where we kind of reached our limit, and we're like, we need capital and we need people to help us grow this business. And we still weren't large enough that I felt like it was the right time for institutional investors, which is why we turned to crowdfunding, which was amazing because we also were able to allow our customers to own part of our company. We had already built a pretty loyal customer base. So that was another, another reason that we decided to go that route.
And Kate, we spoke a little before, but how did the crowdfunding launch? How did it meet your expectations of what you thought you could do and what you actually did on the platform?
Yeah, so we actually did exactly what we were planning to do, which was really exciting. I didn't believe enough in myself going into it. I thought, I was like, well, we want to do about 700,000, but I was like, but if we only do 100, I kind of kept telling myself, well, we might not, but I was kind of preparing myself to be, disappointed. And we crushed it. And it's just a testament to believing in our own capabilities and what we can do. But it was a lot of work. It was our only focus for 3 months, heads down, crowdfunding. Okay, if the business doesn't grow, just focus on crowdfunding. Yeah. And for us, the most pleasant surprise about it was how uplifting and amazing it made us feel, because every single day we were getting messages from customers, friends, families about how family members, people we don't know, about how they believed in what we were doing, and they were putting their money behind it. And that was it was one of my favorite few months of running the company. It was all of that exciting momentum and validation of what we're building. Totally.
That makes a lot of sense. So my experience, different than Elise and Kate, I started NEMA out of grad school. And it was this, from the get-go, I was like, this is going to be chemistry and a hardware device that we're, manufacturing, connected device, app, chemistry, hardware. So I was like, this is going to be very capital intensive. It was something I couldn't bootstrap. And I thought it could, be a massive, impact. So VC fundable. So went the VC path. And so as we transition to the VC perspective, Aditi, I'm curious, as you talk to founders and as they're thinking about their financing options, what do you think they should ask themselves or, think about when they think about all these financing options? And then in your opinion, what's the right candidate for venture?
Great question. I mean, so I would say, I wish that there was a exact stereotype of the type of company that venture investors would fund. I think it really depends on the investors you're talking to. So for example, I think for the longest time, it was really hard to get consumer brands funded. This is pre-2012, right? So think about in 2010 to 2012, we suddenly saw the rise of so many different consumer brands, from the mattress companies to the Dollar Shave Clubs to the pet food companies. There's been just a huge rise of all these consumer brands. And for the longest time, I think people said, and now obviously, and then it created a category called direct to consumer. And I think for the longest time, people just assumed that those businesses had to be bootstrapped and those businesses had to grow organically and not take external capital. That's probably the case. I mean, I remember my previous firm was an investor in True & Co, which is like a women's lingerie brand. And then there was like a whole bunch of companies that started in that category where it was hard. Some companies got funded and then some didn't. So it really depended. I think it really depends on whether there are investors who understand your business and understand what you are trying to build. I will say venture capital, but this is more from my perspective. I skew a lot more to a business, or I spend a lot more time on businesses that I think have real technology or are using software and hardware in some differentiated way, which I think oftentimes, one could say that Casper did that because they have a website, but I don't know necessarily whether a ton of D2C brands have a lot of technology, but then there are a whole bunch of D2C investors, right? If you think about like Forerunner and you think about Mavron and so many of these venture funds that built massive have raised funds and then have seen exits in those categories, those are probably the most appropriate. So I would say where I spend a lot of my time is looking at businesses that I think have a technology aspect to them. And I think Shireen, like Nima definitely did that. And Nima really understood the user behavior and was making decisions based on data that you were getting in. But oftentimes businesses that aren't necessarily using technology or software in that way don't necessarily fall into the wheelhouse of where I will spend a lot of time. So that's kind of my perspective on it, I would say.
That makes a lot of sense. And you said there's no sort of like, one answer to, is it a good fit? But I know Deepa on the audience just asked a question that's relevant here. Just like, are there benchmarks that people should think about, like pre-seed, seed, round sizes, or for round sizes? Like, I don't know, Deepa, if you mean like traction benchmarks or valuation benchmarks, but let's say traction, like, pre-seed and seed. What kind of traction are you looking for?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually think, again, a lot of times, for pre-seed, oftentimes it's just an idea, right? People have an idea and they're sort of starting something off. I would say with regard to consumer, so I can speak specifically for consumer products. With consumer products, I would almost say there's maybe a little bit of a bar where people like to see some traction around, like there are MVP users or there are people who are willing to pay for this. There's like a willingness to pay. We ran a crowdfunding process, or we saw a lot of demand from user studies, whatever it may be. I think the biggest thing people test for is willingness to pay, whether consumer or enterprise. And I think at pre-seed or seed stage, that's something you need to have at least a hypothesis around. I would say at pre-seed, and at seed, have ideally tested it a little bit with a few different end users to see if there is that willingness to pay. So traction wise, I think it's hard to give concrete numbers. By the way, there are also investors who would say, hey, I just think you're such a fantastic founder. This is such a differentiated product. I don't even care that you have nothing here. I'm willing to give you money. That does not happen to everybody. So if I was a founder, I'd be like, sure, happy to take that money. But, I don't necessarily think it happens all the time. Totally. And I'm sure, Elise and Kate also have a point of view around this too, which is like, raising venture capital. Obviously, I'm a venture capitalist, so there are pros to it and I see it. But also sometimes there are businesses that are just much better suited to not ever raise venture funding and give up equity in your business, right? Ultimately, you are giving up ownership and equity into what you have built. So that's a decision that founders do need to make with their co-founders or talk through. Elise, I feel like you did have a point. You did share some thoughts around this earlier.
I've always been on the thought that, if you build it, it's yours. And for me to go and give I love Shark Tank and always watch that. And then I realize, they're giving part of their company away. And that's hard for me to do, but it's, everyone's different. And the other thing I learned too is last year, it was through Ladies Who Launch, where we got introduced to a venture capital situation where I was allowed to pitch Pride in a Box to some LGBT specific funders, and it was such a learning experience. And just hearing what Kate is saying, if you're going to do this, you have to go all in. For me, for Pride in a Box, it's more fun, and I've always wanted to try to sell to the consumer. And it could be bigger, but right now my main business is where we're making our bread and butter. So if I wanted to start something new, and I could start as a serial entrepreneur, I'd have to go all in, like what Kate did. You can't have any distractions, and it's an art, and you have to refine your message and be on point every single time. And I think and there's going to be a lot of doors slammed in your face too. So, I'm not ready for that right now.
Yeah. Yes. No, absolutely. And I think, a comment here in the chat from Sarah, there's really nothing better than forcing yourself to go pitch. It's painful, get good feedback, make yourself better and better. And I think that's totally true. I think no matter how you're approaching the fundraising, that resonates probably with everyone on this panel.
Yep.
So Kate, also, I don't just shifting back to Hope's question, just how does crowdfunding generally work? Can you just give a quick overview to folks about how does it work, and then maybe a platform that you use?
Yeah, so there's two types of crowdfunding. One is, I think, just regular crowdfunding, where it's like Kickstarter. That's like when you're just launching your product and you kind of need a lot of times, like maybe someone has a prototype and they need capital to help them build out, that prototype into millions of units. And then there's equity crowdfunding. And equity crowdfunding is used in place of raising, it could be raised in place of a venture capital round, in place of raising money for angels. It's usually, not always, but usually once your business maybe has a little bit of traction, but specifically you're giving away equity in your company. And so that's what we basically said. We either need to do like a venture round or a round from like angels, or like the we funders, or equity crowdfunding is basically like a way to raise money in the same way you would a VC, but just through a bunch of investors instead of one. We used WeFunder, which we had a great experience on. And then if anybody wants to has questions about them specifically afterwards, I'm happy to share. There are a variety of them out there. We use WeFunder because I had 4 people have really successful campaigns on there and recommend it to me. But you should expect, when you're doing crowdfunding, you have to bring in some of the money from your own network. It's not all going to come from their network. And it doesn't just have to be your closest friends and family. We personally did an email blast out to 500 people that we knew, old colleagues, old classmates, etc. And that's
Speaking of friends and family, we've heard the 3 F's, so friends, family, and fools is a saying, in terms of raising money. So what is your take on just activating your network of friends and family? And Kate, you spoke to that around the equity tool, and it's like the crowdfunding tool, but we're curious to hear, at least Aditi, any thoughts generally on founders just asking their most intimate network for money to launch what they're starting?
I would never do that. It just freaks me out to ask friends and family for money. I will ask fools, but not friends and family.
It's again, it's totally a personal experience. I think I've had a lot of friends. I've participated personally in some friends and family rounds, and I would say I'm yet to see any returns, but it's also sort of a vote of confidence in my friends and kind of people that I believe would be great founders. But yeah, I'd be curious, Shireen, did you raise a friends and family round before?
I did. Yes, I did. I did.
And what was your experience?
Well, my experience was I felt so strongly that what I was doing was going to change the world and make a return, that it was my perspective, at least, it was more like, wow, what a privilege to invest in this opportunity.
Yeah.
And I really, I believe that. So I just, that was sort of my perspective. And by the way, I only went to I had the privilege of also just knowing folks who had made investments before. So I wasn't asking friends who have never made or family who have never made investments before. So I made sure that they had experience knowing that, that this is a high risk, but potentially very high return opportunity. And that's the trade-off. And look, you have an opportunity to get in now, like no one else in the world is doing this. And, we have the best team to make this come to reality. So that was my perspective, raising the friends and family. And we did that in parallel to raising a seed round, so that friends and family were in the seed round. And I just want to touch on this comment that Melissa Watson made here, that it's just like, it feels more like friends, family, and followers, especially as it relates to crowdfunding. And Kate, you mentioned just like the amplification that crowdfunding platform had, like through your friends and family. Maybe you could have raised, thousands of dollars, but it turned into hundreds of thousands of dollars when it went to friends and friends of family and friends of family of family. And I think that was a really great, great opportunity.
Totally. And yeah, it's like I posted on LinkedIn, people are sharing, it's like has this like amplified effect. And I would also echo, like, we didn't ask friends and family for money until we were I self-funded a lot of this business. I put a lot of money into it, all of our savings into it. Like, and we were at the point where it's like, I'm so confident in the return we're going to make. And to me, like, one of the most exciting things for me to think about is like, I can't wait for the day to go to my friends and family and be like, I just 10x your money. And like, I'm like, or 100x your money. Like, I'm so like, that like brings tears in my eyes, like thinking about that moment. But we didn't go and ask for that money until we felt really confident that it was, especially because a lot of our friends and family haven't invested before. We wanted to make sure we felt really good. Of course, never any promises, but we felt really good about what we'd be able to do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, that's awesome perspective. So one question around financing. You get the financing. Sort of, what are the pitfalls you think that founders should be aware of? As you get outside financing, crowdsourcing, and Elise, happy to have your input too as you start to generate the profits back into your business. So what are those like biggest pitfalls of like, okay, you got the financing, what now? What to look out for?
Mine is really easy. Getting the money, a grant, is great because you don't have to pay it back. But the one surprising thing that I discovered is marketing my product, Pride in a Box. And it's expensive. Everyone wants money to promote your product. So that really caught me off guard. Maybe because we don't advertise brand Pride at all, because it's all word of mouth and we work with large corporations. But getting to the general public, the consumers, about Pride in a Box has been a challenge, and nothing is free. Nothing is free. So that's a pitfall for me, because I didn't want to spend that money on advertising. So I've been keeping track of all of the little things we've got, the shout outs we've got, what we spent. And the thing that we spent the most money on isn't return on investment. It's kind of crazy. So that's my pitfall. Watch out, because everyone wants something for free, but they also want you to pay a lot of money.
Any other pitfalls to be aware of?
I would just, I think something that I'm actually experiencing right now that I'm like working through is that now that I have the money, because we've been so scrappy and bootstrapped, I'm afraid to spend it. But it's like, I raised it to spend it and grow quickly. So, it's like, it's just like a weird mental thing that I'm like, so we are spending it, but we're trying to be so thoughtful and strategic about how we spend it. Exactly what you're saying, Elise. You can throw a lot of money on marketing and not get a good return on it. So it's like, we are just trying to be really calculated about how we spend it. But it is hard to like be really calculated and careful, but like get your mindset of, okay, now we have money. We can operate at a different level than we were when we didn't have money, and just kind of shifting the mindset there.
That really resonates with me, Kate. Even from the venture back perspective, when you get that first check, it's like, I even had conversations with the board of like, okay, like let's go. Like you got to pay it. I was like, I don't know. This seems really expensive. It's like you're capitalized. Like let's go. So it totally resonates with me. Just wanting to be so careful about every dollar spent.
Yeah, when we received the grant from Ladies Who Launch, we were super careful because it's not a huge amount, but it was a good chunk of change. And listening to Kate, I'm like, oh my God, could you imagine what I could do with $100,000 or $500,000? What kind of marketing campaign I could do. And so, that just launching it in June, it's giving me an idea of what people like, what people want. I'm taking this really slow, just to not throw a bunch of money into it. But yeah, this conversation makes me think even, what could I do with, $100,000? I could do a lot.
Yeah, I was actually gonna add to that, which is that some of my early stage also, what I end up finding is that so they can they end up raising some capital, and then it's like a lot of the way that the company is structured when you have limited capital and the way the organization is structured is very different. And then when you have a little bit more capital, it's constant trade-off, as all of you are mentioning. But also, it's sort of this almost like this a little bit of a leap of like, can you think big? And like, are you allowed to think bigger? And as the founder and as the CEO, I oftentimes wonder how much this plays a role and how much you guys are thinking about this is, are we allowed to dream bigger than this? Like, are we still in a place of concern? Like there is going to be a day when we run out of money, right? And then I think about these founders who've raised so much money for, different types of companies and are spending. I just remember there's this one, like Shamat always talks about, like the $5 Kind Bar offices and like the kombucha driven offices where like, offices are filled with all the good snacks, and like it's not just like the regular snacks, it's like a crazy amount of snacks. And so I think it's always really interesting to me when does that switch happen? And I wonder if it's like a gendered thing or whether it's even a stage thing. And I mean, I don't want to make assumptions, but it's just something I've always thought about where like, I don't know, had WeWork been run by a woman, like what would WeWork have been like?
Totally. That's a really
and
interesting
maybe that wasn't too much of a contentious thing to raise, but I think about that all the time.
No, I mean, I think that's a really interesting point.
Well, one of the things when we started Brand Pride, we were just selling softball jerseys and just, little things here and there to people. And then in 2011, I learned that I could get certified as an LGBT-owned business. And that's when the light switched for me. It was, I could go after these Fortune 500 companies. And now we have, it allowed me to think bigger. And I'm so glad I did, because we wouldn't be where we are right now, making millions of dollars every year. We're working with Twitter and Microsoft and Starbucks and Nestle. And I mean, I was writing these down last night and I'm like, holy shit. So, with Pride in a Box, what is going to make me make that switch? I have the vision in my head that this could be pretty amazing. But when will I make that switch and when will I, stop and say, okay, this is good. This is something consumers would like. So I'm waiting for that. Kate's done that, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, I've seen some messaging recently and groups for women entrepreneurs that's been like, hey, like, don't quit your day job until like your business is at this size, or like, the intentions behind the messaging are good. I'm not, but it's the challenge is I do think that a lot of the messaging to females is not to dream big. I know when I was starting out, everyone's like, oh, go do pitch competitions. And like, but I can only get $5,000 or $10,000 in pitch competition, which is great. But I'm trying to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, I need more money than that to accomplish the goals I want to achieve. And I think a lot of times, like, the narrative towards females is like the assumption that it's going to be hard for you to raise money. So like, just be careful, tiptoe your way into it. And if you want to do it that way, great. Like, if you like, at least like, if you're loving the way, if you're happy and you're profitable, like, you're doing the right thing. But for a company like ours, like, we weren't profitable yet. We needed to grow. We needed capital. We knew it. And I was like, I'm not going to finance my entire business. I can't, like, I could win every pitch competition and still probably not have enough money to like finance the business the way I need to. And I think that we do need to like I at least you're saying, you're hearing me say this. I have, I like to, I think it's Lacey, the term expanders. You see people who are doing something that you maybe didn't think you could do, or maybe you didn't think was for you. And then you see someone else do it and you're like, wait, like, maybe I do want that, or maybe I could do that. And like, I have so many female founders in my life that I look at like that. And it just, I don't know, it gets you thinking bigger and thinking differently. And maybe you say, nah, not for me, but at least you're considering it, you know?
Yep. Yeah. It's a mindset. I know that if I were to go after venture capital, I would be a lion. I would be ferocious. I would get my shit together and plan and prepare and be laser targeted. I mean, that's the only thing I would do. So, but am I ready for it yet? I don't know.
I would actually say, at least, like, I feel like that's like the thing that I think a lot about, which is like this question of like, am I ready for it or not? And I want to, and it's not to say that I'm pushing you to be ready or not be ready, but I often find that, and I think Deepa just wrote this too, is like, well, I think she wrote, women tend to take on tougher problems to solve and more consumer-oriented businesses. But also, I agree with that, but I thought she was also going to say, which is, we also tend to be tougher on ourselves. Like, we have a really high bar for what we think should be a fundable business versus by external capital, versus people who believe that, you know, these are companies that should be given cash any which way. I'll say, for example, like, to me, there are a couple of bootstrap businesses that I think, you know, have been are male founders. So like Webflow is a really good example, or and they then eventually raised venture capital funding, but for a long time were bootstrapped, as was NerdWallet and like a couple other companies that come to mind, which remained bootstrapped and sort of self-funded. But those are almost the exception. And the rule is that a lot of them went out to raise funding, right? And then if you think about businesses like, again, two companies I've talked about a lot, but like, if you think about Casper mattresses, right? Why would a mattress company that you never get to try the mattress be completely venture backed? Or why does that make a ton of sense? And now there are a lot of people who've made a ton of money on that business, right? But they sort of decided right off the bat, they're like, we're going to go raise venture dollars for it. So that's something that I spend a lot of time thinking about and trying to coach founders around too, is like, you may not believe that somebody else, like, one of my partners says this to me all the time, which is like, you just need the first yes. Mm-hmm. You will hear hundreds, 200, 300 no's, but you need one yes. And that's all you need to believe in and get the business off, or get the sort of business going. Also, that one yes is all you need to get 5 more term sheets.
Yes,
Maureen will probably tell you more about that.
Yeah, no, but it's easy, you're right. And I was trying to think, like, this advice of like, it probably came from one of the partners at Upfront, but it was this mantra that kept me going through fundraising, which is, you know, one no, another no is closer to that yes. That yes is there. It's just like, you're getting, okay, that's awesome. Celebrate it. Like, we learn, we move on, let's go. I think is a great point. Okay, we actually only have 5 minutes left, which is crazy. This flew by, and I want to just address some of these questions, and then we're going to end with that one actionable thing, just roundtable panel. Like, what is one action you want everyone in the room to take? So with some of the questions here, this is a great one, and we actually wanted to cover it too, but some top resources that we've all used, books, pitch deck platforms, like favorite people you follow, et cetera. Any resources come to mind as people are thinking about financing that could be helpful to this to this group?
Ladies Who Launch.
Okay, yeah.
Definitely.
I can't think of any that come to my head because I'm pretty new at it. That's why I'm going to email all of you.
Yeah, I would say for me, my biggest resource have been people that are in like my founder network who are like one stage ahead of me. So they're like maybe raised money last year, and it's a give and take relationship. But I mean, I would find searching for that kind of network of people and that's where I learn the most from founders that are like 6 to 12 months ahead of me in my journey.
Yeah, I think like even as we were raising VC funding, just doing research on the firms and then talking to founders who have startups that were funded was really helpful for us to understand, okay, milestones, traction, et cetera. And actually, Aditi, please go.
No,
Go ahead. No, I have a question for you after.
I was going to say, the other thing is that I've actually found sometimes you may find VCs who are more than willing to spend time with you and like actually spend a lot of time like with advice, as opposed to, they may not be the right people to give you money, or they're saying like, hey, this is not for us. Okay, great. Well, can you help me? Can I run my pitch by you? Can I talk to you? Until they say no, there's no reason why you shouldn't keep bothering them. And I wouldn't even call it bothering, but like VCs are constantly saying, how can I help? Right. And like, my question is, okay, well, if you're not gonna give me money, at least like, let me run my pitch by you, or maybe you can make 5 introductions for me, or here are 5 angels that you're connected to that might be helpful for me. So I would almost say in some ways, it's like almost just be a little bit more shameless and like just ask more than we're so used to just like always giving, but like it's okay to ask for more. And until somebody says like, hey, I really don't have time. Okay, then fine.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Aditi, another question here geared towards you is, are warm intros still like a thing? I would say the thing for like VC intros, or do you see people blindly, coldly reaching out? What are your thoughts on that for VC outreach?
Yeah, I take a lot of blind outreach emails. Like I personally will meet with a lot of founders, especially female founders. That's specifically something that I care about. So I will take meetings with them. I think warm intros are great. Sometimes I'll sort of question why another VC is making an intro when they could just fund it themselves. Sometimes I ask that question, but I would say that's probably I would say there's no harm in asking. Again, I personally actually got my first job in venture capital by cold emailing 100 VCs and getting and getting one job offer. So like I went through my own sourcing and leading into this, and it was shameless emailing. And I was like a 24-year-old banker at getting crushed, and I used to write emails on my personal laptop at my desk from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. And I got 10 first round interviews, and I took the first offer I got. And
that's awesome.
So I think and it's hard. It is really hard, I will say, because getting the rejection is really hard. So, but you just got to keep doing it.
But it was one closer to your yes that launched you on this amazing
Absolutely.
career.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are at time, which is crazy. Let's do a quick roundtable. What's one action that you want everyone in this room to take in the next couple of days?
Oh my God.
I'll start, and I think it was inspired by a previous comment, but I think everyone, no matter where you are in your stage of idea or how you're thinking about funding, create a pitch deck. Maybe you have one, make it better. Like the pitch deck is, you're selling. No matter when you're starting a company, I feel like the number one skill set is selling. You're selling customers, you're selling investors, you're selling colleagues or coworkers. So just make a pitch deck, even if you don't have one, just to go through like what that vision is and just put it down on paper.
I have one. It's start putting on your Teflon suit and find a self-help book on how many no's and a face guard when you get the door slammed in your face, and then just let it roll off. When I was younger, I would be crushed, and now that I'm 50 something, I don't even care anymore. It's just like, okay, next. So become Teflon.
I would say, like life, many big things in life, consistency to achieve the goal is key. So if you're running a marathon, you train for 6, 9, 12 months, a little bit every day leading up to the big event. For fundraising, if you're not super stoked about it, you're going to deprioritize it. I promise you. So if you're looking to fundraise, set aside time on your calendar, an hour a day, 3 hours every day, whatever you can do, consistent every week, every day. And you're not going to get everything done in that hour or 3 hours, but be okay with that. You're just going to do as much as you can, a little bit every day, a little bit every week, will help you get there.
And the thing I would add is just, I kind of said this earlier, and I'm going to just echo it again, is like in the next couple of days, ask someone for something that makes you feel uncomfortable as it's helping you in your journey. Obviously not like, something inappropriate, something specific to your journey of fundraising or starting a company. Like, take a leap and sort of like ask for it in the next couple of days. Because if you don't start now, we'll always have a reason not to do it.
Awesome advice. Well, thank you, Elise, Katie, Kate, Aditi. Thank you all so much. And I thanks everyone who gave the great questions and I love this panel. It's like great encouragement on the panel too. Just comments of encouragement. Great, just a great group of women. So thanks.
Thank you, Shireen, for coordinating the panel for all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
all
you.
Right.